Have you ever ignored a piece of advice and then boom, totally regretted it later? Yeah, we've all been there. Today, we're going to dig into why our brains are basically hardwired to push back against tough truths. We'll connect some pretty ancient wisdom with what modern science is telling us. And, the best part, we'll look at a super simple trick you can use to actually fix it.
Okay, so to really get a feel for how high the stakes are here, let's kick things off with a story. It's about a mistake in leadership that is, honestly, way too common and can be incredibly costly. So this is like a textbook case of how things can go wrong, right? It's a three-step path to disaster. First, a really important client gives our leader some tough but crucial feedback. Second, he just brushes it off. It's a one-time thing, he says, even though his own team is telling him the exact same thing. And third, well, the inevitable happens. He loses a massive contract for the very reason everyone warned him about. The price of not listening, a huge hit to revenue, and maybe even worse, a huge hit to trust.
And this all leads to the big question, doesn't it? If the information needed to succeed was sitting right there in front of him, it was basically a gift, why do our brains instinctively just push it away? What makes all of us, at least a little bit, like that leader?
To really figure out that why, we're going to look in a place you might not expect. We're talking about a piece of wisdom that's thousands of years old, but has a surprising amount to say about how our brains work today.
Okay, so at first glance, this seems pretty straightforward. The hearing ear and the seeing eye. Got it. But there's actually a lot more going on here than meets the eye. This isn't just talking about our physical body parts.
It's using this really cool literary device called synecdoche. It's a big word, but a simple idea. It's when you use a small part of something to stand for the whole thing. You know, like when you say all hands on deck. You don't just want the hands, you want the people. It's the same thing here. The ear and the eye represent our entire ability to perceive the world, our attention, our observation, our understanding, the whole shebang. The proverb is telling us this capacity for perception is a fundamental gift.
And this is the crucial part. The verse isn't guaranteeing that our first impression is right. Not at all. It's more like a call to action. It's implying that we have this amazing gift, and with that gift comes a responsibility to actually use it, to really listen, to really see, especially when the information is tough to swallow.
All right, so let's connect the dots. How does this ancient piece of wisdom line up with what modern neuroscience tells us? What is literally going on inside your skull when you're hit with a truth you just don't want to hear?
Well, it's basically a tug of war between two different parts of your brain. On one side, you've got your amygdala. Just picture it as your ego's hyper-alert bodyguard. It's fast, emotional, and it treats any challenging information like a direct threat. Then you have your prefrontal cortex. This is the calm, cool, and collected CEO of your brain. It's slow, logical, and it's in charge of deep thinking. But here's the kicker. When that tough feedback comes in, guess who reacts first? Yep, the bodyguard.
And this bodyguard has a favorite go-to weapon, confirmation bias. We all know this one. It's that automatic reflex to roll out the red carpet for information we already agree with, but to put any opposing view under a microscope, just looking for a flaw. It's a mental shortcut that feels comfortable, but man, can it lead us down the wrong path.
A classic study from 1979 showed this perfectly. Researchers gave people studies with conflicting evidence on a really hot-button issue. And what happened? Did they carefully weigh the facts? Nope. They basically hugged the study that confirmed their beliefs, calling it high quality, and then just tore apart the one that challenged them, calling it flawed. And the craziest part? Instead of moving toward the middle, they walked away even more convinced they were right all along. So, if our brains are wired for defense, what are we supposed to do about it? How do we override this knee-jerk programming? Well, thankfully, the solution is a surprisingly simple but really powerful brain hack. It's called an if-then plan, and it acts like a circuit breaker for that emotional bodyguard. The plan is super simple. If you feel that defensive wall going up, then you pause and you do just one thing. Repeat the other person's key point back to them just to confirm you understand. Something like, okay, so what I think I'm hearing is... Now, this one simple action has three powerful benefits. First, it engages your CEO brain. The very act of forming their point in your own words forces you to switch off that emotional amygdala and fire up the logical prefrontal cortex. It puts the thinking part of your brain back in charge. Second, you get more and better information. It clears up any misunderstanding right away. And a lot of the time, it actually encourages the other person to add more details or clarify what they mean. You're not arguing anymore, you're gathering data. And finally, it creates a critical pause. That little bit of space between hearing something and reacting to it, that's everything. It stops that defensive, knee-jerk reaction in its tracks and gives your rational brain a moment to catch up and form a considered response.
So let's bring this all full circle. This simple brain hack isn't just some modern life hack. It's the perfect, practical application of that ancient proverb we started with.
It really boils down to two ways we can look at that gift of perception. The wrong way is to use it as a shield for our ego. To think, my perception is a gift, so my gut feeling must be right. End of story. But the wise way is to see it as a tool. To think, my ability to perceive is a gift, so my first job is to actually use it, to listen, to observe, and to gather information before I make a judgment.
And that, right there, is the most important takeaway from all of this. True wisdom doesn't start with having all the answers. It starts with being willing to hear them, especially when they're the ones we don't want to hear. It starts with truly using that hearing ear and seeing eye.
So I'll just leave you with this question. The next time you feel that defensive wall go up, what if you try that simple if-then plan? What critical truth might you be just one single conversation away from learning?